Um, and I'm intending to email you several things that you're going to be using along with this video. The PowerPoint that I'm showing you, a paper by Sarah Brooks, maybe a definition I think that I had supplied students with, and a short piece on the a particular theory we're going to use in coding, and a few examples of the data to code. All right, so all that you're going to have hopefully when you see this video. All right, so the first goal, remember, was, are you going to be able to, after you do the coding, describe it to somebody else? So I want to show you what that looks like. Describe the process of coding. Not what you found, but how you did the coding. All right, so Sarah Brooks shared an article with me that I think is a very good example. All right, so the first question I want you to answer is, what do you notice about how Sarah describes the qualitative process in just the abstract? So pause the video now, and then you will post your answer to a discussion board I'm going to create in D2L called Qualitative Coding Practice. All right, so I'm not sure what you said, but let me point to some of the things that I might say. First of all, she describes the kinds of qualitative data that she collected: observations, interviews, instructional artifacts. I would guess that's lesson plans and handouts to students. Second is, she did give a kind of theoretical framework that I suppose probably influenced the way she did her coding. She says, this study employed a conceptualization of a history curriculum for democratic citizenship as the framework for critique of each of the past-present connections. So I hope to see how that is a very specific way of thinking that she starts with when she does her analysis. So she's not looking at the lesson maybe from a Danielson perspective of how engaged students were, levels of engagement or levels of questioning. She wants to know specifically about the curriculum for democratic citizenship and how that is related to using history to make connections to the present. That's obviously going to strongly influence her analysis. All right, and then she says basically the same thing, that her analysis of the data focused on past-present connections and how that helps students understand. Right. So actually quite a bit of information there in the abstract. All right, second thing I want to do here, and this isn't directly related to the objectives, but it's important anyway. I want you to look for the participant selection method description in this article and how you interpret what she did and whether how you make sense of whether that's good research approach or not. So pause the video, find the participant selection, and then post to D2L. What did you think of her participant selection? All right, hopefully you found this section of the article, participants in their school context. And the main thing I want to point out is it starts out, the teachers who participated in the study were purposefully selected from a larger sample of teachers, all of whom had reputations for creating engaging lessons. These two particular teachers were selected because of their work in helping students see the relevance of history. And she doesn't say that she did it specifically this way, but maybe it was happenstance, happy happenstance that one worked in a suburban school district and one in a major metropolitan city. Okay. Now, I'll just ask you to think about this. Is this random selection or representative selection? Hopefully you would say no, because anything that's purposeful is not random. And I just want to make the point that this is good qualitative participant selection, because in qualitative research we're not going for representation, We're not going for generalizability, like because it's true of these people, it's going to be true everywhere. We're looking for insights and meaning. And so it's better to have purposefully selected teachers who, for whatever reason, can really help you gain insight than to select any teacher randomly. If Sarah had selected a random history teacher, and this history teacher was kind of wrote by the textbook, she wouldn't have anything good to write about. Okay, so she picks teachers that fit the profile that she's looking for. All right, next thing that you're going to look for, pause the video and post, is how does Sarah describe her method of doing analysis? Not her findings, not what her analysis is, but what does she say about her methods of doing analysis? Pause the video. All right. Hopefully this is the paragraph you found. Now, there is earlier description of how she did her data collection, but I'm specifically saying, and once she has her data collected, how did she do the analysis? And this whole paragraph here describes it. It seems like she had a three-part approach, and I would probably have to read some of her references from Maxwell and Barton and Levstick to fully appreciate everything she's saying here. And if you were writing this up, you would probably expand this to a couple pages and be a little more detailed. But she's writing for a journal where the space is condensed. But I want you to notice what she really did was she first read through all of her data several times. So she's really getting used to the data and really getting to understand it well before she starts her coding. This is pretty typical approach in qualitative research. You don't have to do this, but it's part of her systematic process. And then she outlines two more steps where she was much more detailed in her approach. Okay. And I will point out in the third step here, she actually analyzed the data from a specific framework from this research. So this is going to be an example of deductive coding, really. She's got a very specific framework, and she's saying, just imagine the framework as the Danielson framework. And she's saying, well, I'm looking for Danielson 3A, and now I find an example of 3A, and here it is. And I'm looking for an example of Danielson 3B, and I see this, and here's the evidence of it, and it fits that framework, and here it is. So it's very deductive. She's got a framework, she's reading her data, and trying to fit the data to the framework, or say the data doesn't fit the framework and the teacher is not doing what Barton and Levstick had identified. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be an example of deductive coding. All right, now we're not going to do any more with Sarah's research here. The only thing I'm using it for is to show you how you would write it up. So imagine you had done a qualitative study and you had done analysis and coding. At the end you have to explain it to somebody else, and so what you would do is write something like this, although I think a little bit more elaborated. All right, in the next video we're going to get you into doing some coding. It's going to be fun.